Welcome to another episode of Recipes for Resilience. Today's topic I'm going to be discussing with Maylene Broderick many things, but we're talking about cross-cultural life, leadership, or being a woman in a leadership position, probably going to get into work-life balance and much more. Let's see where our discussion is going to go. My name is Pauliina Mapatha, and I'm a certified coach and a Comenza credentialed practitioner. I help professionals, individuals, and organizations with change, transformation, and wellness. And my guest today is Maylene Broderick, who, so I'm gonna a little bit look so that I remember everything. But educationally, we have something in common. Her background is also in geography and also in urban planning. And she's worked 20 years, both in corporate and in government sector in various executive and senior management positions, both in Canada and in South Africa. And her current position is Chief Director, Enterprise Development and Transformation at the National Department of Tourism. And her portfolio includes domestic tourism, enterprise development, sector transformation, and responsible tourism. And also in the portfolio is the Women in Tourism program. But I know Maylene also as a mom and as a community leader, and with a great integrity. She's passionate about contributing, like in the school environment. She's been chairing a board and really looking into the transformation things within the independent school environment. And she is also one of the persons that is probably has a very like interesting and like multicultural or cross-cultural background. And I always know that she's having 2 flags in her car, and she's at least proudly South African and Canadian, probably Zimbabwean and much more. And yeah. And she is based in Johannesburg, in South Africa. And whilst we are recording this, we are in the middle of the 3rd wave of the COVID. And I think the last news said in the past 24 hours, we have more than 17,000 new infections, and more than half of them are in the Gauteng province where you are. So resilience is really something timeless. So we will be talking about it broadly, but just important for our audience to know that this is the time that we are talking about it. Maylene, mostly welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing.
Thank you, Pauliina.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know, when one listens to somebody telling you about your own life, you know, you sort of have to check behind you. Oh, it's talking about me, you know. It sounds very, very interesting, but to me, it's quite mundane. I mean, it's my life, you know. So, yeah, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation today, because one often doesn't get time, especially as a mom and as a woman, to talk about yourself. We're not raised that way, so this is really a treat.
Yeah, and you know what, I just think it's so powerful for us women and human beings to actually to hear each other's stories and to learn from each other, and sometimes we sort of hold back many things, and we might be thinking that, oh, this is only challenging for myself or something like that. And when we sort of open up and we share something, it's a great opportunity for others to say, hey, I've experienced something similar, and just to sort of to find your own tribe and get empowered that way. But as we usually do, we always in this series, we start from the very personal experiences and life experience, or life and work experiences. So Maylene, let's hear a bit about your story. What kind of challenges have you experienced in your work or in your life, And then how did you deal with them? What were your strategies? What were your resilience strategies?
No, it's interesting. I think this word resilience has become a lot more used and understood and broken down as we've navigated this COVID-19 pandemic. From the first wave right up to now, as you indicated, we're in the midst of a third wave, and it's really terrible in how it's hitting Gauteng specifically. So I like to think of it as resilience and resourcefulness, because I don't think the two are separate, because in order to be resilient, you have to draw on resources. For me, what does that mean? I may an import into South Africa. South Africa is my home, has been for the last 21 years now. But I was born in Zimbabwe, raised in Canada, and then got married and moved to South Africa. And, having moved from Zimbabwe to Canada had its own challenges. And just when I thought, okay, I've commandeered those and I'm resourceful, I met my current husband. And when I say current, like I'm about to change, I'm not, he is my husband, and then moved to South Africa and thought, oh, I can do this. I'm an import, I'm an immigrant. And I've done this before, but my goodness, I was not prepared for what I encountered coming into South Africa. It was quite a different experience from going from Zimbabwe to Vancouver, Canada, which was my home for 18 years.
So what were the differences? I believe both of them were like challenging and adaptation processes. So what were the differences and or the similarities?
I'll start with the similarities. Obviously, you're new and you've got, you have to now have you have to start literally from scratch. I arrived here with 2 suitcases and into a blended family. And that itself was different. I think when I arrived in South Africa, coming from Canada, I was in a multicultural society where I was not looked at in Canada specifically for my race. I was just a woman, first of all. It obviously was the issue of being a woman of color, but it wasn't as pronounced as when I got to South Africa. I'd sort of, forgotten about the apartheid, because we didn't have that in Canada. So, the similarities was, yes, I was new. I had to form a new social circle. I had to find a job, and I had to find my tribe, as you said. But I was not prepared for the encounters of people choosing to associate or not associate with you based on the color of your skin. I was called, they called me, an overseas colored. So that term was something I wasn't familiar, colored, Yes, I grew up in Zimbabwe and I knew what colored was, but when I got to Canada, I was a Black female, So I moved to South Africa and I'm Black, but I have another category now. I'm colored. So I'm this colored woman. Having to navigate that space was quite different, and trying to make my niche of being, a professional, wanting to befriend people who had similar thinking and outlooks to me. But that wasn't the case. And I arrived in a small town called Petersburg then, English speaking, and no one around me spoke English, besides my husband. I remember going to the one and only coffee shop at the time, and I was reading a book, and my husband called and said, "Are you fine?" So I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, you're sitting alone in a coffee shop." And I'm sort of, "I don't see you here." Somebody that knew him had called him to tell him, "Your wife looks like she's alone." And for me, coming from Vancouver, that was a perfectly normal thing.
To go to coffee shop by yourself, read a book,
exactly,
or
enjoy my coffee with my book, having me time, But of course, I got to this small little town, and not known by anybody, and then suddenly I stuck out, So that was, that was interesting.
Yeah. So just like the how people want to categorize or how they take you as a face value because of your color or your ethnic background or something like that.
Exactly. yeah, that taught me a whole set of skills around, you know, having to, you almost feel like you have to prove yourself, and it's still the case, you know, where you have to, if you're in a boardroom of men, first of all, you know, you have to sort of make sure that they know you're there, not because you're a woman, because you know what you've got. And then you add the color dimension, you know, it's just like, okay, so she's a woman, she's made it, but oh, she's a colored woman in South Africa, you know, so is she here because of that, or is she here because she's got the goods? And I still struggle with that, you know.
So you're basically talking about the thing that as much as probably in South Africa, the employment equity and all these transformation policies were needed and are important. But then when you actually make it, and somewhere you are taken as a, you know, a token or quota that, you know, woman, darker skin.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Exactly. And you know, you feel this pressure to be twice as good and to be able to deliver. And you might even at times become defensive because, you know, when somebody's raising something, you think it's because they see you as a woman or a woman of color or a colored woman, versus the fact that they genuinely don't necessarily agree or understand your point of view. So that has given me all sorts of different kinds of skills around being a better listener, being in tune with what's in the room and who's in the room, you know, skills I didn't necessarily have to draw on in a meeting in Canada. I had to develop a different set of skills to be resilient, and there it became more resourceful.
Yeah. But if I think about, so you have like, there is this terminology, adult cross-cultural kid, or even adult third culture kid, because you know, your parents moved to, and your whole family moved into in another country, and not really in this, they were not in diplomatic or in those expat circles. So really, you use the word immigrant and all that.
That's right.
So that already brings, you know, the blended, sort of a very unique individual, like how you form your identity, cultural identity and otherwise, and then then coming backwards and forwards. And then you are actually a love pet also, because you moved to South Africa to marry.
Oh my goodness, always. So, absolutely.
You know,
otherwise I would still have been sitting in Canada at this point in time. Yes, had I not met my husband on safari in Zimbabwe.
On holiday.
Yes.
So that's quite interesting. So isn't it? I mean, I think that's just a sort of a neurological human thing, that we sort of organize things to make it easier for us to understand. So but I mean, the boxes nowadays, the boxes where we want to categorize each other, they are not so clear anymore, because we are becoming more and more well traveled. Find the love across the cultures and languages and all that. One thing what is often very difficult for the so-called love pets who move because of the relationship and the marriage, is to get into work life and to get into really a professional work life. Often they really need to reboot anything and everything. And you've been quite successful. What could you share? Was it a struggle or was it easy? And how did you go about to actually get into senior and all those positions, and like was it your qualifications or your previous experience? And yeah.
That's a really interesting question, because, you know, it's almost as if I never had time to stop and think about how am I going to do this. I just went with the flow. Exactly as you say, you know, I am a town planner, urban planner by profession. I was working in a regional district and moving quite far quickly up the ranks in the district municipality that I worked in Canada. And so, of course, I assume I'm coming to South Africa. I've got the qualifications. You know, there's massive opportunities for urban planning in a developing country, especially the spatial apartheid. And, you know, I've got all these skills, I'm good to go, you know. Not the case, not at all. I think I sent out about 40 CVs before I got my first interview. And it was for an entry-level position in a bank, because when I put myself through university in Canada, and I worked for a bank there throughout my university career, and so of course I had this banking experience. So lo and behold, you know, by the 30th application to municipalities and planning consultants, I kept being told, you know, you don't have South African experience, you're not, you're overqualified, or you need to register as a planner in South Africa, which I'd started the process to do. You know, we can't hire you. Then I applied to a bank and had to take an entry-level position. It was devastating. You know, because my husband had his own business, and we made a decision that I wouldn't work in the business because I'm an independent woman and I had, you know, all these credentials, and I'd easily find a job. Au contraire, you know. So I had to swallow my pride and take the entry-level position. And I think I was, you know, I entered into the bank at an entry-level position. And after about 2 to 3 weeks, they said, actually, no, she's a little bit, she's quite a smart person, and she kind of knows what she's doing. Oh, she has some good ideas, you know. And then I moved from the branch into the regional office. And then in the regional office, I was like, actually, she is quite, she can apply information, you know. But I was, you know, I took every opportunity I could. I thought, once the door is open, I will make my mark, because I believe in myself. I believe I have a lot to offer. And I have to do this because I'm not going back to Canada. I'm in this marriage. I'm in this town that feels so foreign to me. Surely my work has to bring me some satisfaction, because, you know, where else am I going to get it? You know, I'm a newlywed, you're still finding each other. As I said, I walked into a blended family. My husband was married and widowed. So I had these 2 little children, and that wasn't going very well either. So I was like, I did well at work. I did very well at work. So I needed to do well again. So I just took the position. And then I ended up, I rose through the ranks and ended up, you know, the regional head of the bank, not immediately, but took a few years. But I did, I was able to, through hard work, you know, long hours, upskilling myself through the banking system. I was able to but it was really resourcefulness and resilience, you know, to say, I've got to make a plan. I've got to pivot, as the new word is now that we know with this pandemic, you know. I've got skill sets. I can think strategically. I understand banking. I think I can understand what consumers need. If I put this together, I can carve a niche out for myself in the bank, which I did. And then ultimately went back into government, which is where my passion is, and as a planner and as a strategic planner specifically, and then ended up back in government where I am now.
Yeah, but that's I think that's a great encouragement, because encouragement for other people, whether women or men, or other immigrants, just to say that you need to re-strategize, and sometimes you need to reboot, and you can. It might take a few years, but you can sort of
no, you absolutely
back
can.
where your career was, and
the importance of a network. You know, I can't stress that enough. You know, because I really. No, networking it's not one of my strengths. I don't think it's many women regard it as their strengths. You know, guys do it all the time on the golf course, around a beer on a Friday. You know, we don't do that. We've got to go home and cook, and we've got to, you know, especially in an African context, you know, wife has a specific place, you know. You know, I really, you know, honed that network and was able to leverage that network to open other doors for myself.
That's another one which is very important. And then also, like, even what I hear is that sometimes if we move from one sector to another or something like that, we might not keep in touch so well with the the old or previous colleagues, but it's just to try to keep that network also alive and keep in touch.
Absolutely. That's one of the resources that I was able to draw on. That's why I moved, you know, back and forth between the spaces, because of the importance of keeping that network alive. And I still have the same phone number I have from when I arrived in South Africa, and that was absolutely crucial.
Yeah,
don't change your number unless you have to.
That's a practical, a very practical.
Do not change your cell phone number unless you have to.
Yeah. What about, because you moved to South Africa 2000, so it's and into this Petersburg now, Polokwane.
Yes.
I moved to Petersburg, which then changed within a couple of weeks to Polokwane in 2002. And in the beginning, you know, the internet connection was not great. And it was bloody expensive. And like, I think where I lived, it just wasn't well covered. The coverage was not well. How did you, in the beginning, how did you keep contact to Canada, to home or the previous home, and how has it changed now?
I'm surprised I didn't even mention it. That was difficult. Because as you say, then, you know, what was internet, you know? Even cell phones were not that popular as they, I mean, today they're common, you know, but those days, you know, only business people had cell phones, and people still had landlines, which was extremely expensive. So I spoke to my family once a week. And then after the first 2 years here, I wasn't even 2 years here, and I said to my husband, I have to go home. And I come from a very, very close, tight-knit family. We lived very close to one another. We are still very, very close, and thank goodness now for you know, WhatsApp, and then Skype came, and you know, and then now obviously we've got Zoom and WhatsApp and Teams and Google and all these things, but which makes it so much easier. But you know, when I arrived, like you said, in 2000, you know, I would have to speak to my parents telephonically, and the time difference, you know, was another thing. You know, so I would be sitting up, you know, sort of 2-3 o'clock in the morning, kind of, you know, just so that I could speak to my family, because everybody worked. So, you know, you had to accommodate that. And that was very, very difficult. And I didn't have family in South Africa. My closest family was in Zimbabwe. But of course, you know, I'm not earning my own money, and I'm independent. I don't want to ask my husband to say, can you give me, I need family. Can I jump on a plane, you know? So yes, it wasn't as easy. And I visited Canada, you know, I still do, you know, once every 2 years, because my family's still there. A lot of my friends, very formative relationships, you know, university, last years of high school were Canada. So, you know, a lot of very strong friendships are still there. But then I also realized, look, I can't keep doing this. I've got to build a new network of friends. Come in the language barrier. Yeah, come in the language barrier. So you seek out expats, even though I wasn't an expat. You know, I had more in common with the expat community than, you know, people who looked like me. You know, there's just an assumption that if you look like me in South Africa, you speak Afrikaans.
Oh, yes.
So of course I don't. So immediately I walk into store, someone asks me something in Afrikaans, I say, I'm sorry, I don't understand. And people say, oh, she thinks she's better than us, you know. Yeah. And that wasn't, so I learned very quickly how to understand it, not speak it, but understand it, because I had to survive. Yeah, survive literally.
Yeah. So Petersburg, or if we talk about colored community as Afrikaans, and I think even Afrikaans has been a bigger language here, and then of course the indigenous or the African languages.
Exactly.
So I think that's a great tip, because what I see some of my clients and even myself been moving and adapting to the culture is that the adaptation will also go quicker if you do have the local friends and places and all that, so that you actually settle, you actually start planting some roots or finding some connections that are strong and forming those friendships and so forth. beyond your nuclear family. So I think that's, I can see if the people
so
who don't
important.
do that.
Because in my first, I would say 3 to 4 years, I didn't. I was, I was living between countries in my mind, because I wasn't working in my field. I was in an environment that I found quite hostile in terms of not being able to connect with people because of language. And I just didn't have a lot in common with some of the women I was coming into contact with, so I was determined, I'm not putting down roots here, and that was very, very taxing emotionally and physically, very taxing. Until I made that mental switch. And that's so important that you say, you must put down roots. Yeah. And put a peg in the ground, so to speak, and say, okay, I'm here and I'm going to be here. I will define it on my terms, but there are certain things I need to inculcate into me that are local, whether it's food or restaurant or language or, there's certain things you have to just espouse and put down roots. Otherwise, you are forever a nomad and you belong nowhere. And that's what I was struggling with. I didn't belong in Canada. I didn't belong in South Africa. I didn't belong in the bank. I didn't belong. So I just didn't belong. And I was like, okay, no, I got to belong. And that was a very big step forward in defining who I am today. Yeah.
And such a common big thing for children, youth, and even as adults who grow up cross-culturally and move between the countries, is that there is more, or somehow it is a blend or something, and it can look very different from one individual to another. Now you are also a mom. Before we go to the professional talks about transformation and diversity and leadership and whatever, you are also a mom. And obviously, because you have lived across the cultures and you've got, I believe, a couple of passports, or you have had, and
I have,
and then raising your own child. How have you? How is this life experience informed your parenting style, or how are you raising your son? You've got a son. He's how old is he now?
I have a son who's now 17 and in grade 11 here in boarding school in Johannesburg because of my work commitments and travel. But it was his choice to go into boarding school, and I supported that, and he's excelling there. He's my only child. As I said, I'm married into a blended family. I made a very deliberate decision to raise my son as a global citizen. He too has a couple of passports, and at any time, if he wants to go back to Canada, he comes often with me when I go. But interestingly, the older he gets, the more he, identifies with being a South African. He knows that he's got this other passport and that mommy has this family there. But he is very, very, very proudly South African. And I think that's awesome because this is his home. And it's really good for me that he has roots, because I know what it's like to move from place to place and feel like, okay, I'm not going to fully invest here because I can always go there. He doesn't feel that way. I've raised him to be a strong young man with very strong opinions. I've tried my level best in the culture that we come from and the post-apartheid society that defines him also as colored, that he is first a South African. He must be proud of his maleness, and we often speak about toxic masculinity and what that means, cancel culture, etc., because that's sort of the order of the day. And he is in an all-boys school. So, respecting women, and he knows that I work, that his mom is very proud of being a woman, and learning to respect other women and other cultures and people that are, you know, I have a gay brother and a gay sister. So he's always grown up around different colors, different cultures, different sexualities. You know, so, you know, multiple pronouns, identities. I've taught him to, you know, befriend and be himself and be accepting of human beings that he has something in common with, not that look like him or, you know, have the same opinions as him, quite the opposite actually. So yeah, it's not been easy because, you know, wherever we go, I remember when he went to his new school, you know, they when he went in grade 8, they sort of said to him, because he's a so-called colored child, what scholarship are you on? Because in his school, the colored children are in a distinct minority, you know, and that really upset him. So we had to have that conversation, you know, and we get along very well, and there is no topic that is off limits for him and I. You know, his dad is quite born, raised in Africa his whole life, South Africa and Zimbabwe, you know, very strong opinions about males and things like, so that's been a bit of a challenge. But I'm proud to say he's a well-developed, well-rounded, informed, opinionated young South African male.
Yeah. And that's great. I think that's the age group, 17, 18, where often indeed, if one does not feel safe and close, it's not necessarily the time that you easily talk about everything with your parents anymore, exactly. Unless if your opinions are accommodated and your viewpoints, should they differ or whatever, are actually accommodated. So that's a great thing. Let's go to a little bit like into your professional role now. Thank you so much sharing from, you know, things from your personal life. But now transformation and women empowerment and the small businesses. So it's a lot of empowerment and transformation or diversity related, inclusion, equality related themes in your current portfolio. And I believe probably even the level that you've been worked and where, especially in South Africa, where the country is going, and all those policies that need to be incorporated in various sectors. How have you, or what do you think are still like the major challenges, or what are you passionate about to correct or to advance? I don't know what is the right word. And what do you actually do?
Yes, no, I'm very blessed to have the work that I have. Is so diverse. You know, as I said, we read out there. South Africa, I think, globally, has probably one of the best policy and legislative environments globally. Our constitution is forward-looking and groundbreaking, actually, in a lot of instances. You know, equality, transformation, you know, human rights in the Bill of Rights are entrenched, you know. However, the disconnect between the policy in the legislative environment and the implementation, you know, just is of serious concern to me. Which has driven me to stay in the public service and drive things like, you know, transformation, particularly in the tourism sector. The sector has some serious challenges around transformation because tourism is seen as a pastime of particularly sort of well-heeled or traditionally white people. So, you know, people of color don't travel for leisure; they travel to visit friends and family. And when they travel, they go and stay by mom or sister or whatever, and they go to the house, attend the funeral, the baby shower, whatever, and leave. They don't necessarily, you know, stay in a hotel or whatever. So trying to change that mindset to make it more, to wherever I am, to make it more inclusive, because we are 20 odd years into the new South Africa, and with, like I said, the second to none policy environment. But the vestiges of apartheid are still very much there, and prescribed decisions, disposable income. And even though, you know, we have requirements for having people of color at board level, in power, in, you know, positions of power, decision-making positions, that's not necessarily translated in the corporate world, most definitely not. In the tourism sector, while women are the majority in terms of numbers, we're not in the decision-making positions. We're not the owners of the large, you know, if you look at the accommodation sector, for example, women play a large role. But in other, like the aviation sector or the car rental sector or the transportation sector, women are not major players. You know, so it's oh no, tourism is driven by women. Not at the decision-making position. And I think that's the case in a lot of sectors in our economy in South Africa. We are the majority, and literally women make the world go round.
Yeah.
But as for active participation, despite policy and even legislative requirements, you know, like the president announced 40% procurement must go to women. I can assure you that's not happening.
Yeah.
You know? But we need to continuously, and we try through, for example, the Women in Tourism program, which you know, I'm responsible for. And we're actually now getting noticed globally for what we're doing for women in tourism, because we need a seat at the table, but it's an incremental process. And how do we do that? By bringing more people on board and letting the decision makers understand that for us to be sustainable as a country, as a sector, we need to include everyone, make the pie bigger, not cannibalize from one to give to the other, but make the pie bigger, and therefore it becomes sustainable.
Yeah. And in the beginning, so you mentioned many things with, I mean, income levels and all the legislation and the adherence, but you also mentioned the mindset. Yes. And I wanted to just ask, do you think, is it, and you talked about how people are, which groups of people are used to utilize that, you know, tourism facilities and actually go for holidays and all that, and that it's even there, maybe the mindset is not, it's not yet shifted that this is for all of us. So do you think it's more the mindset or affordability, or how people are maybe treated still in the various establishments?
I think it's a combination. You know, it cannot be one versus the other. I think it's a combination. Because most definitely mindset, but it is changing. You know, the fastest growing cohort of hikers are young Black females who are actually traveling on their own, you know. So, but I think also as South Africans, we want change and we want it now. You know, it's only 20 odd years. We had 400 years of apartheid, you know. So I think this country is we're doing phenomenally well in so many aspects. And now, like in the tourism sector, where we're starting to celebrate those wins and actually expose them, you know, we can do a much better job of telling the good stories as opposed to just the negative stories. Yeah. And that will help to change the mindset. And then people will say, oh, actually, I can go to that resort because there are people like me that look like me there, and I won't be treated badly, you know. And in fact, if I go, more people will go, and then we'll be in the majority there. And, you know, so I think it's incremental, and as South Africans, we need to allow that incremental change, support it, and tell the good stories as opposed to just the negative ones.
So is it part of the program? Because I think often, so tourism is all about also advertising and telling the stories. So if we wanted to read these positive stories, where can we find them?
Well, that's a very good question, because there's definitely, South African tourism does, I think, a great job in terms of, you know, the campaign that we now call Share South Africa, #Share South Africa, where we encourage South Africans of all colors and all ages and all sexualities to share their, you know, short left experiences. You know, South Africans are very familiar with short left because, you know, you ask a taxi, it's a short left. So we've now incorporated that into our travel parlance and said, you know, take a short left in your own country. You know, South Africa alive with possibilities. There's so much marketing jargon around, you know, what we can do. So I think it is, South African tourism is doing a wonderful job around that. Brand South Africa is doing a really great job. And I think corporate South Africa, as we've seen, come on board now, specifically around, assisting with the impacts of the pandemic, has done a wonderful job too. The Tumamina campaign. I think we really, if we can just build on that, we will do better, but we need to give ourselves a chance and rather build on the positive rather than always, picking that one story that changed the story. There were 20 other good stories, but we chose as South Africans to focus on that one,
So that's also about mindset or some
absolutely
negative strategy to
absolutely yeah.
That's so. Is there something that that's already a tip to focus on the positive and tell the positive stories. Any other tips? And if we also think about this sort of, like you said, it's this transformation and change process which is still going, and so much have already been achieved, but there is so much left to be achieved for us to really embrace diversity and be on equal footing, and everybody to feel that they can belong and they are included. Any other something, maybe tips for other female leaders, that how can they, in their own work, wherever they work, how could they advance this, or any other leaders? To be inclusive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting that you should say that, because some of my most difficult experiences with female bosses are with female bosses. So I think we could do a lot more as female leaders to build other females and bring them along with you. As opposed to being threatened by other females or wanting to fit into that male stereotype of being this harsh boss, and stamping your authority, as opposed to nurturing that comes, that caringness that comes naturally from us, embracing the female side of your leadership. Because I think that, look globally, look at what has happened with the pandemic. The response of female leaders like, Jacinda Ardern and I can't remember the Prime Minister of, is it Finland? It's one of the Nordic countries, that they have done brilliantly, because they didn't apologize for who they are and the decisions they made, they made decisions based on who they were. And that's what I think we need to do more as female leaders, but to really and truly to support each other more. And the South African context, I must say, I've had more negative experiences with female leaders than positive, and I think that could use some work. So I would say to my fellow female leaders, let's stand together. I read a quote by Mark Clooney the other day, and if you read Maya Angelou's Still I Rise, Phenomenal Women, we are all that. So let's all be phenomenal women and rise, because, it's not about, that poem says, it's not about, the color of the skin, or, it's about your swagger. It's about who you are. It's about your curves. It's about you, the female. So don't try and be what you're not, and embrace that, and really treat other women with respect and bring them with you.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I've really, I'm not sure if there are cultural differences or what is the thing, but there is, in my life, I've talked with other immigrants or other people who travel a lot or have lived in different countries. And let's say, like in Finland, it's like holy. A woman-to-woman friendship is a very holy relationship. I would even say spiritual and holy relationship.
Absolutely.
You are really each other's confidants and really support each other, no matter what. And sort of, I would even say sisterhood. No blood lineage or nothing, just the tie of friendship.
Absolutely.
And that can really that can really take the whole gender forward, and the whole
take the gender
world
forward, transform society, particularly in our country, you know, where there's still patriarchy is so prevalent, and we have one of the highest femicide and gender-based violence rates in the world. Something is amiss, you know, and where do we start? What role do we as women play when we raise our sons, you know, when we call out our brothers and our, you know, our male cousins? It's not okay, you know. So we have that responsibility of that sisterhood, as you say, because I think it's when it works, it's magic. It's absolute magic, and it can work. I've seen it, I've experienced it in my own life, you know. So absolutely, yeah, I love that sisterhood. Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
and you put it so well. Thank you, Maylene. It was lovely to chat with you, and I'm going to, in the show notes, I'm going to share the link to maybe to your LinkedIn page if someone would like to connect with you.
Please do.
And
I'd love that. Yeah.
we could even put some great examples from the tourism sector of those campaigns or those hashtags, what you mentioned, so that people can get excited and also go and explore, and also as individuals reclaim the places and the spaces and enjoy our beautiful South Africa.
Absolutely, it's ours to enjoy. Absolutely. Thank you for this opportunity, Pauliina. Thank you.